The hum of the station's engines vibrated through the floor, but Calla couldn't feel it. In the stillness of the briefing room, her mind raced, chasing thoughts that flickered in and out like dying stars. Why doesn't anyone return from Earth? The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. Every cadet in the room, their eyes glued to the hologram of Earth that loomed over them, seemed to be waiting for someone else to speak, someone who still believed the Federation's story, someone who wasn't looking beyond the surface. Calla wasn't that person, and she wasn't going to sit in silence. She raised her hand. The Federation station Orbit 342 was a gleaming monument to human ambition, a floating city surrounded by the black void of space. From its windows, the stars stretched endlessly, an eternal reminder that humanity had once thought it could conquer everything. Below Earth, the cradle of humanity was a distant memory, abandoned, forgotten, and wrapped in a mythos of death. Earth had become nothing but a legend, a place where no one dared venture. The station's halls were lined with recruits, hopeful cadets fresh out of their academies, eager to serve the Federation and push humanity's reach even further. The hum of progress was everywhere, new technologies, new strategies, and missions beyond the stars. For most, this was the dream. But Calla was different. She wasn't here to admire the Federation's glory. Raised on a colony far from Earth's myths, she had come to this station with a single goal in mind: to find out what happened to Earth. Her upbringing had been unconventional. Her parents had been archivists, once working on the remnants of Earth's past. But they were Federation-approved. No, her family had dug deeper than the Federation ever allowed, uncovering truths buried in the rubble of Earth's downfall. Calla had heard whispers, rumors that Earth's story was more complicated than the Federation let on, something darker, something the Federation was desperate to keep hidden. Her thoughts returned to the present, where the officer's question lingered in the sterile air, echoing off the cold walls of the briefing room. Calla's eyes narrowed. Her fingers twitched. The cadets around her shifted uncomfortably, waiting for someone else to speak. The tension was palpable, but no one else raised a hand. So she did. I left because it was too easy. The room went silent, a sharp intake of breath from the cadet next to her. She didn't care. She wasn't here to parrot the same tired narrative they were fed. Earth wasn't the wasteland they all believed it to be. She knew that, and she was about to prove it. The officer, Commander Voss, looked at Calla like she had just slapped him. His face went from neutral to cold in a fraction of a second, and the air between them grew thick with unspoken judgment. The cadets around her exchanged wary glances. "Excuse me," Commander Voss's voice was ice cutting through the air. "You claim to have left Earth. Do you understand the gravity of what you're saying?" Calla stood tall, unfazed. "I understand perfectly. I left Earth because the truth is far more complex than the Federation wants us to believe. Earth wasn't just abandoned. It was locked away." A murmur swept through the room. The air was thick now, charged with suspicion. Voss cleared his throat, stepping closer to Calla. "And why should we believe you, Cadet? You have no proof of this." She didn't need proof. She had always known there was more to the story, and now, in the presence of these cadets, she felt the weight of that truth settling in her chest. "The Federation has been feeding us lies for decades. Earth didn't die, Earth was silenced, and no one here even questions it." She paused, her words deliberate. "The real question isn't why no one returns from Earth, it's why we've been told to forget about it." Voss was silent for a moment, but the tension in his eyes betrayed his growing frustration. "Enough, Cadet Calla. The Federation's word is law. You would do well to remember that." But Calla's defiance wasn't done. And what happens when the truth doesn't fit the law? Her words echoed in the room like a challenge. The other cadets shrank back, unsure whether to follow her lead or cower under the weight of the officer's authority. But Calla's resolve was steel. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone who had been told to forget Earth. Commander Voss's eyes hardened, his posture rigid as he glanced at the other officers present in the briefing room. The Federation didn't tolerate challenges, especially ones that questioned their carefully constructed narratives. Calla had just made herself a target. Voss turned on his heel, addressing the room with authority. "This is not a place for personal agendas. You will all forget these wild claims and focus on the mission at hand." But Calla could feel the weight of the eyes around her. The cadets were listening now. Maybe some of them had never questioned the Federation's version of history. Maybe some of them, like her, had started to wonder about the story that had been hidden beneath the surface. The mission briefing was over, but Calla's heart didn't stop pounding. As she left the room, she knew she had made a dangerous move, but the need to know the truth was stronger than ever. Her heart burned with the thought of Earth, the cradle of humanity, forgotten in the shadows of the Federation's lies. Later that night, she sat in her quarters, staring at the walls of her sterile, pristine room. It was too easy here. The life of a Federation cadet wasn't a life at all. It was a series of controlled movements, each one leading further from the truth she desperately sought. She had to do something, and she had to do it now. The Federation wouldn't allow anyone to return to Earth, not unless they had control. But Kala wasn't about to be a pawn in their game. She would find her way back. She would unlock the truth, no matter the cost. And that was when the message came through. Hidden beneath layers of encryption, it was a piece of the puzzle she had been waiting for. Kala, they're watching you. Hum of the station's engines was a constant presence, a steady reminder that the Federation's grip on the galaxy was unyielding. But within the stillness of her quarters, Kala felt the walls closing in. The message had arrived, encrypted and hidden, just like everything else that didn't fit the Federation's narrative. Her fingers trembled as she activated the data pad, scrolling through the message that had been waiting for her. Kala, they're watching you. The words seemed innocuous at first, just a cryptic warning, an anonymous message in a galaxy full of them. But there was something about the tone, something in the way the message made her feel seen, and not just watched but monitored. She sank into her chair, the weight of the Federation's eyes pressing down on her. They had been watching, yes, but now they were paying attention. Her outburst in the briefing room had pushed her onto their radar, and they were ready to silence her, just like they had silenced everyone else before her. But that wasn't going to happen. She wasn't going to back down, not now, not after everything she'd uncovered. She wasn't like the other cadets who believed the sanitized version of Earth's fall. They were satisfied to live their lives under the Federation's control, following their orders without question. But Kala, she had a different kind of fire. With a deep breath, she wiped the message away and began typing her own response, an encrypted message to a contact she had made during her time as a cadet, someone who could get her closer to the truth, someone who was equally disillusioned by the Federation's stranglehold on knowledge. Her fingers flew across the screen, and when she hit send, she knew she was crossing a line. No going back now. The Federation wasn't the only power that could pull strings from the shadows. She had her own allies, her own network of rebel-minded individuals. This was only the beginning. The next few days were a blur of routine, the kind that made Kala want to tear her hair out. The Federation wanted obedience, and they got it, at least from the majority of her fellow cadets. But the tension around Kala was palpable. She could feel the eyes on her wherever she went, the whispers behind her back. It was during one of these quiet moments, sitting in the mess hall, surrounded by faces she once considered friends, that Lieutenant Juno slid into the seat across from her. Juno was a skilled strategist, a cadet whose loyalty to the Federation was as unwavering as the steel hulls of their warships. But lately, Kala had noticed a flicker of doubt in his eyes, something hidden beneath his stoic exterior. She didn't know if it was weakness or suspicion, but it made him unpredictable. "Did you really leave Earth?" Juno asked, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. Kala glanced up at him, meeting his eyes for the briefest of moments. "Why does it matter?" she replied, her tone flat. Juno didn't back down. "I've read the logs, you know, the ones the Federation declassified. They say Earth is lost, a dead world. But you—" He paused, his voice lowering even more. "You seem to know more than anyone here. Something about you doesn't fit." Kala leaned back, considering her next words carefully. She couldn't tell him everything, not yet, not until she was sure where his loyalties lay. "The Federation is full of lies, Juno," she said softly, meeting his gaze again. "And Earth, it wasn't lost, it was hidden, but we're not supposed to know that." Juno's brow furrowed. "You really believe that?" "I know it," Kala replied, her voice steady with conviction. "I know it because I've seen the records, the ones they don't want you to find." The silence between them stretched, heavy with the weight of unspoken thoughts. Finally, Juno leaned in, his voice barely audible. "Then help me find out what really happened. I'm with you, but you have to be careful. The Federation will crush anyone who digs too deep." Kala nodded, feeling a spark of something she hadn't expected. Trust. She hadn't counted on him, but maybe she didn't need to fight this alone. "Let's get started," she said, her voice low but determined. The following days were a blur of whispered conversations, late-night decryptions, and covert meetings in dark corners of the station. Juno and Calla grew closer, their alliance becoming a quiet rebellion. They worked in the shadows, digging through old Federation files, finding discrepancies, inconsistencies, and hidden files, pieces of a puzzle that had been meticulously erased by the Federation. The tension built slowly, steadily, like the gathering storm on the horizon. But Calla had no idea just how close they were to discovering something far worse than what they had imagined. It was a routine check-in with their assigned mission officer, Captain Drell, that finally pushed them to the edge. They were expected to report on a newly discovered sector, one that was in close proximity to Earth's last known coordinates. As Calla and Juno were making their way to the captain's office, they overheard something they weren't meant to hear. "Keep them busy, Drell. Don't let them near the sector," a voice crackled over the comms. It wasn't the captain's voice, it was someone higher up. Calla's heart skipped a beat. "They're hiding something," she murmured, her mind racing. Juno glanced at her, his face pale. "This isn't just a mission report. They're moving something, and we're not supposed to know about it." Before they could react, the doors to the captain's office slid open with a sharp hiss. The captain stood there, her posture rigid, eyes calculating. "Cadets," she greeted them coldly, "I trust your assignment is going well." But Calla didn't care about pleasantries anymore. She could feel the walls closing in. They were running out of time. "Tell me about the sector," she demanded. "The one near Earth's coordinates, what's so important about it?" Captain Drell's gaze flickered for a moment, and for a brief instant Calla saw something, a hint of fear, of guilt. But it was gone before she could register it fully. "That's classified," Drell replied curtly. "You're here to gather information, not question orders." Calla pressed further. "Why aren't we allowed to know? What are you hiding?" A long pause, then the captain stepped forward, her voice low. "You've asked too many questions, Cadet Calla, and now you'll be forced to face the consequences." In that moment, the weight of everything she had discovered, the lies, the cover-ups, the threat to her very existence, came crashing down on her. The Federation wasn't just hiding Earth's fate. They were covering up something far darker, something that could change the course of humanity's future forever. The captain reached for a hidden console, and in that instant, Calla knew that the Federation had just taken their first shot in a war that was about to erupt. And they had no idea how far she was willing to go to uncover the truth. The room was suffocating now, the air thick with tension. Calla could feel the walls pressing in as Captain Drell's hand hovered over the console. The faint glow from the hollow screens reflected off the captain's eyes, hard and calculating, as if she was already anticipating the blowback. Calla wasn't afraid of the Federation's games anymore, but she could see that they weren't just trying to control knowledge, they were trying to control her. Before the captain could initiate the lockdown, Calla made her move. "You're not stopping me." Her voice was cold, low, but unwavering, cutting through the tension like a blade. Drell's eyes flashed, and Calla noticed something she hadn't seen before: fear. A fleeting, almost imperceptible tremor in the captain's gaze, the first sign that she wasn't as untouchable as she appeared. Calla's fingers danced across her console, sending a quick burst of commands through the station's AI system. A low hum echoed through the walls, and the ship's security systems blinked to life, her own doing. The Federation's lockdown was about to backfire. "You're already compromised," Calla said, her eyes locked with Drell's. "I'm taking the data you've hidden. The whole galaxy deserves to know." The captain stiffened, and for the first time, Calla saw her mask crack. "You don't know what you're doing," Drell hissed. "You're opening Pandora's box. Do you think you can stop what's already been set in motion?" Calla's heart pounded in her chest as the station's alarms blared, signaling a breach of protocol. The Federation wasn't just trying to suppress her, they were preparing for a full-scale response. Without another word, Calla turned on her heel and bolted for the door, Juno hot on her heels. The corridors of the station became a blur as they sprinted down winding hallways, the sound of their boots echoing in the silent halls. Behind them, the station's security forces were already on the move, fast, coordinated, and ready to bring the full weight of the Federation down on them. "They're coming for us," Juno said, breathless but determined. "We need to get to the command center. We need that data." Calla nodded, but the gravity of their situation pressed against her. The Federation had just declared war, a war they hadn't been prepared for. They were up against an enemy with far more resources, far more control, and now they were on their own. They reached the command center just as the first wave of Federation security forces began to surround the area. The doors to the center slid open, and Calla and Juno found themselves face to face with a room full of armed officers, led by none other than Commander Voss. "So we finally meet face to face," Voss sneered, stepping forward. "I knew you would break, I just didn't know it would be this soon." Calla's mind raced. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, she was fighting for the truth, for everything the Federation had buried. She wouldn't let it end here. "You're wrong, Commander," she shot back. "I didn't break, I'm only just beginning." The tension in the room thickened as Voss's fingers twitched, signaling his officers to move in. But Calla didn't flinch. She had one final card to play. "If you want to stop me, you'll have to destroy everything we've worked for," she said, her voice unwavering. "Because this data is going to the galaxy, one way or another." Juno, who had been silently preparing, suddenly stepped forward. In his hand, he held a small, glowing device, the Federation's primary encryption key. It was their one shot at bypassing the security and unlocking the data Calla had been fighting for. "Do it, Juno," she urged, the stakes higher than ever. "We don't have much time." With a single motion, Juno inserted the encryption key into the central system, and the room was filled with a high-pitched hum as the security systems began to break down. The lights flickered, and the screens that once held the Federation's secrets began to flash with decrypted data. But before they could react, Voss moved. "Take them down," he barked, his voice dripping with cold fury. The command center erupted into chaos. Officers rushed forward, weapons raised, as Calla and Juno scrambled to defend the data. The lights in the room turned red as alarms blared, signaling a full breach of Federation security. Calla's heart pounded in her chest, adrenaline surging through her veins as the fight became a blur of chaos and movement. Juno ducked behind a terminal, firing his weapon at the advancing officers. Calla, her mind razor-sharp, moved with a precision that surprised even her. She used every advantage the Federation had given her, every ounce of training, to push through. "Get the data," she shouted to Juno, her voice full of fire. "We need to finish this." Juno didn't hesitate. He activated the final decryption sequence just as an officer fired a shot at Calla, narrowly missing. The explosion of energy that followed forced them both to the ground. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze, the battle, the chaos, the burning tension. And then the data was complete. "It's done," Juno said, gasping for breath. Calla's gaze swept over the now depleted command center, where the last few officers were retreating. The data they had uncovered, Earth's true history, was now out of their hands. But in that moment, Calla realized something far more dangerous was unfolding. They managed to escape, barely. The Federation's retaliation came swiftly, but Calla and Juno were already one step ahead, their escape route planned with the precision of those who knew how to survive. As they boarded their transport ship, Calla couldn't help but feel a heavy weight pressing down on her chest. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Federation would come for them, but now they had something far more dangerous than military might: the truth. As the ship hurtled through the stars, Calla leaned back in her seat, the weight of everything settling in. The data she had fought for, the truth about Earth, was now in the hands of those who would use it. She had no illusions about what would come next. The Federation would try to suppress it, erase it, but she knew better. "This is only the beginning," Calla said softly, her voice filled with resolve. "The Federation will stop at nothing to control what's ours, but now we fight for Earth, for humanity, for the future we deserve." Stars outside the ship's viewport were streaks of light, blurred by the speed at which they were traveling. Calla sat in the cockpit, staring out into the abyss, her thoughts heavy with everything that had just transpired. Earth's truth was now a weapon in the war between the Federation's control and humanity's right to know. Juno sat beside her, his expression grim. He didn't say anything, but the silence between them spoke volumes. They had fought for the truth, for a future that humanity deserved to see. But now, the galaxy would have to face the consequences of that truth. The Federation would never let them go free. The full might of the Federation was now after them. Their every move would be monitored, and their every decision would be scrutinized. But the data they had retrieved from the Federation's command center was more than a victory. It was a beacon. "We can't stay on the run forever," Calla said. her voice barely above a whisper, as though speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile resolve she had built over the past few days. Juno shifted in his seat, his eyes locked on the controls of the ship. "I know," he replied, his voice laced with exhaustion. "But we've done something they'll never forgive. We've opened the door to something they can't close again." Calla nodded, but the weight of what they had done pressed on her chest like a vice. She had known the Federation would retaliate, but she hadn't fully grasped the scope of their power. It wasn't just the military they had to fear. It was the full infrastructure, the reach of the Federation's reach into every corner of space, the control over communications, and the manipulation of information. They were now fugitives, marked by the most powerful force in the known universe. The question remained, what now? The ship lurched suddenly as a ripple of energy shot through the hull. The warning lights flashed on, and the ship's automated systems began to scream at them. Calla's pulse spiked as she looked at Juno, who was already tapping at the ship's controls, trying to keep everything in check. "Federation," Calla muttered under her breath. The ship had been detected. They didn't know how long they had before the Federation's forces were on top of them, but it didn't matter. Every second counted. "We need to move," Juno said, urgency creeping into his voice. He pressed a button on his panel, and the ship lurched again, this time under the power of its hyperdrive engine as it shot toward a nearby nebula, a chaotic, sprawling mass of gas and dust that could provide temporary cover. Calla gripped the seat as the stars around them blurred into lines, their ship tearing through the void. But in the back of her mind, there was an gnawing sense of dread. They weren't just running from the Federation anymore, they were running from the truth they had uncovered. And soon, they'd have nowhere left to hide. The moment they entered the nebula's dense gas clouds, the ship's sensors began to glitch, and the vibrations of the hyperdrive grew erratic. They were losing signal. Both Federation forces and their allies would be blind here. But as Calla looked out of the viewport, her mind raced, trying to connect the dots. The Federation's response had been quick, almost too quick. It was like they had expected this, like they knew Calla would act. "Juno, do you think they were waiting for us?" Calla asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Juno was silent for a long moment, his hands still on the controls as he maneuvered the ship carefully through the nebula's twists and turns. "I don't know," he finally said, "but it wouldn't surprise me. The Federation has been watching us. Someone in their ranks has been keeping tabs on everything." Calla's stomach twisted. She had already seen the corruption of the Federation up close, but this was something darker. A betrayal so deep that it threatened everything they had fought for. "There's more to this than we thought," she murmured, her mind racing. "Whoever is pulling the strings wants us dead. They don't just want the data, they want to make sure we never speak again." Before Juno could reply, the ship lurched again, but this time it wasn't the nebula's turbulence. There was something else, something much bigger, much more dangerous. The screens flickered, and a voice crackled through the static. "You are not alone, Calla," the voice said, cold and mechanical. "You've been playing a game that you cannot win. The Federation will see to that." Calla's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice fierce. "We are the ones who have been pulling the Federation's strings," the voice responded, its tone unsettlingly calm. "The ones who chose to let Earth die and buried the truth with it. We've been waiting for someone like you, but you won't last long, not against us." Calla's mind spun as she pieced the implications together. "So it's not just the Federation," she said, a cold realization dawning on her. "Someone else is controlling them, someone who's been manipulating everything, even the fate of Earth." The voice on the other end of the line remained silent for a moment, and then, in a final, chilling statement, it spoke. "Your fight has just begun, and you will fail." Before Calla could respond, the communication cut off, leaving the ship in eerie silence. The moment the connection ended, the lights inside the ship flickered once again and the alarms went off. Something was happening outside, large shapes moving in the nebula, too organized to be a random event. The Federation wasn't chasing them alone. A massive, shadowed ship emerged from the nebula's fog. It wasn't Federation standard, but the markings on its hull were unmistakable. It was another force entirely. Calla's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan as Juno swore under his breath, yanking at the controls. "It's no use," he said. "We're trapped. They've cut us off. We're not getting out of this one." But Calla's eyes narrowed. "Not yet, we fight." Her hands were already moving, quickly grabbing the blaster from its holster. "Juno, set course for that ship," she commanded. "We need to board them. It's the only chance we've got." Juno's eyes flashed with a mix of fear and resolve. You're insane. You want us to board their ship in the middle of a trap. It's the only way we're going to survive, Calla said, her voice filled with urgency. Trust me. The tension inside the ship was suffocating. The engines roared as Juno swerved the ship toward the ominous, shadowy vessel emerging from the nebula's gaseous cloud. It wasn't just Federation ships pursuing them now. It was something much darker, far more enigmatic. Calla's gut twisted with the unsettling knowledge that this wasn't just a military pursuit. It was personal. Hold on, Juno shouted as he pushed the ship's throttle to its limits, the ship groaning in protest. This isn't a Federation fleet, it's something else. Calla's eyes narrowed, the adrenaline pumping through her veins. I know, and we're not running anymore, we're boarding them. Juno glanced at her, disbelief clear on his face. You're insane, this is suicide. But Calla's resolve was unshakable. They want to silence us, Juno. The truth we're carrying is too dangerous. If we don't act now, it's over. As they approached the alien vessel, the eerie hum of its engines sent a chill down her spine. The ship was enormous, its sleek design far more advanced than any Federation technology she had seen. The hull shimmered in the dim light of the nebula, a dark, imposing silhouette, moving with the grace of something that had been crafted by an intelligence far beyond human understanding. The markings on the ship were unfamiliar. No Federation insignia in sight, only cryptic symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The ship's weapon systems came online with a sudden, terrifying hum, and the first salvo of shots whizzed past them. Calla's stomach dropped, but she didn't flinch. This was the only way. They had to board it. Brace yourself, she shouted as the ship veered to the side, dodging another barrage of enemy fire. The cockpit rattled, the ship's shields barely holding up against the alien craft's weapons. The moment they neared the alien vessel, Juno activated the docking clamps with a quick motion. The ship shuddered as the two vessels locked together. The cold silence that followed was almost worse than the sounds of battle. We're on, Juno said, his voice tight. Now what? Calla grinned, her pulse racing. We fight. She was out of her seat before he could even respond, her blaster already drawn. The door to the docking bay hissed open, and she was the first to step out into the unknown. The atmosphere on the alien ship was unlike anything she had ever felt. It was colder, darker, and oddly sterile. The walls of the corridor were lined with smooth, obsidian-like material that seemed to pulse with an unnatural glow. The ship was eerily quiet, with no crew visible, just the hum of its alien systems that sent a shiver down her spine. Stay close, Calla whispered, her eyes scanning the darkened corridor. The sound of their boots echoed eerily, but nothing stirred in the shadows. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the soft click of a door sliding open. From the darkness, a figure emerged, tall, lithe, and encased in an armor-like suit. Its face was obscured by a helmet, but the silhouette was unmistakable, a soldier but not human. Calla's hand tightened around her blaster. She wasn't sure what it was, but it wasn't friendly. Get ready, she said under her breath, signaling to Juno. Without warning, the alien soldier lunged, its movements swift and fluid. It was upon them before they could react. Calla fired a quick shot, but the alien ducked, moving with terrifying agility. The energy beam missed by inches, and the soldier's retaliatory strike came with a force that sent Calla stumbling backward. Juno fired a round, narrowly grazing the alien's shoulder. The soldier growled, a sound that vibrated in the air before unleashing a flurry of blows. Calla barely managed to deflect a strike with the edge of her blaster, her arms screaming in protest. We need to get to the command center, Juno yelled, narrowly avoiding another attack. But Calla's eyes were fixed on the soldier. There was something about it, something almost human in the way it moved, despite its alien design. The soldier seemed to recognize this too. It hesitated for just a split second, locking eyes with Calla, and in that instant everything changed. The soldier stepped back, lowering its weapon. You are not supposed to be here. Neither are you, Calla responded, trying to hide the shock in her voice. She had never expected this, never expected an alien to speak to her, let alone question her presence. We were not meant to be found, the soldier continued, its voice low and gravely. But you have uncovered something that was meant to remain hidden. You have touched the heart of the Federation's lies, and now you must face the consequences. Calla's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood firm. We've already faced the consequences. We're here for the truth, and we won't stop until we get it. The alien's gaze hardened. Then you will die with it. The alien soldier's words were more than a threat. They were a grim prophecy. The corridor around them lit up with blinding white light as the ship's defense systems powered up, and Calla knew they didn't have much time. Juno's face was set in determination as he fumbled with his weapon. This is it. We need to get to the central core, now. But Calla knew they couldn't run anymore. The Federation had lied to them, and now the alien forces had made their move, revealing a conspiracy that had stretched across the galaxy for centuries. The war for Earth's truth had only just begun, and they were the first ones to uncover it. It's not about surviving anymore, Calla said quietly, her voice resolute. It's about making sure the truth survives. With a quick motion, Calla ducked behind a nearby console, her mind racing through their options. We fight for Earth now, no turning back. The alien soldier looked at her for a moment longer, and then, as though reaching a decision, it stepped aside. Then you are ready to face what comes next. But remember, it is not just the Federation you are fighting. There are others who would see you fail. Before Calla could respond, the ship shuddered violently. The Federation's counterattack had begun. With the alien soldier standing aside, Calla and Juno rushed toward the heart of the ship. But deep in Calla's mind, she couldn't help but wonder, who or what had set the Federation on their course of lies? And more importantly, who would be the last to stand when the truth was finally revealed? The air in the alien ship was thick with tension, the atmosphere colder than anything Calla had ever felt. The hum of the energy fields reverberated through the hull as she and Juno sprinted down the narrow corridors, their footsteps echoing in the hollow silence. Each step felt like an eternity, every turn a step closer to the heart of the alien craft, and to whatever truths it held. Calla couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't just running from the Federation. They were running from the truth itself. The alien soldier had stepped aside, allowing them to pass, but its words lingered in her mind. You are not meant to find this. The deeper they ventured into the heart of the ship, the more the weight of those words pressed down on her chest. If the Federation had been hiding secrets, these aliens, whoever they were, had been hiding something worse. Juno glanced at her as they rounded a corner, his face pale but resolute. We're almost there, he said, but his voice betrayed a hint of uncertainty. Almost where? Calla shot back, her voice sharp. We don't even know who we're up against anymore. The walls of the ship began to pulse with an eerie, bioluminescent glow, casting strange shadows on their path. The air was thick with the scent of something metallic, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck like a heartbeat. We're up against more than just the Federation, Juno muttered, his grip tightening around his blaster. Something bigger, and it's not just Earth they're protecting, it's the whole damn galaxy. The words struck Calla like a physical blow. She had known on some level that this wasn't just about Earth. But to hear it aloud, to have it confirmed by Juno, the Federation's manipulation stretched far beyond what she had ever imagined. They reached the heart of the ship, the central core, a massive chamber that spanned the width of the vessel. At the center stood a colossal console, its surface alive with holographic data, swirling in the air like an ethereal storm. The entire room hummed with power, the air crackling with energy. This was where the truth lay, the nexus of the alien force's secrets. This is it, Calla whispered, a sense of awe flooding her as she stepped into the room. This is what the Federation wanted to keep hidden. Juno stepped forward, his hand hovering over the interface. Are we sure we want to access this? We don't have a choice, Calla's voice was unwavering. The truth has to come out. The moment her fingers brushed the surface of the console, the room shuddered. The air shifted, the lights flickering as the systems began to respond to their intrusion. For a brief second, Calla thought they might have triggered some kind of self-destruct sequence, but then a voice filled the room, deep and resonant, its tone carrying the weight of ages. You have entered a place that was never meant for you. The voice wasn't human, it was far older, far more alien. It reverberated through the ship, filling every corner, vibrating against their bones. It wasn't a warning, it was a statement of fact. Calla's heart raced as the holographic images on the console shifted, revealing a galaxy map, the galaxy as it had never been seen before. Hidden deep within the map were sectors marked with strange, unfamiliar symbols, coordinates leading to places that shouldn't exist. What is this? Juno breathed, stepping closer, his eyes wide with disbelief. It's the map of the Federation's secrets, Kala said, her voice heavy with understanding. These coordinates, they show hidden bases, abandoned colonies, and places where the Federation has been keeping the truth buried. But the map was only the beginning. As Kala accessed more data, the holographic projections shifted again, this time revealing what lay at the heart of the Federation's lies. Earth was not the only planet that had been erased. Entire civilizations, advanced technologies, and alien species had been systematically erased from the Federation's records. Earth had been the first to fall, but it had not been the only one. No, Juno gasped. They've been covering up entire species, entire histories. Kala's mind raced, the weight of the revelation settling in. The Federation hadn't just been erasing Earth, they had been erasing anyone who threatened their control over the galaxy. Alien races, rebellious factions, entire planets, all forgotten. And now, it was up to her to stop them from continuing this cycle of suppression. But as the data continued to unfold, a new message appeared on the console, one that wasn't part of the Federation's programming. It was alien, cryptic, and far more personal. You are the last chance. They will come for you, you will be hunted. The voice was a warning, but also a challenge. The room's temperature dropped suddenly, the light dimming as the ship's power systems began to fail. Kala's pulse quickened as the walls seemed to close in on them. The ship had detected the breach. The Federation was coming. We don't have much time, Kala said urgently, stepping back from the console. We need to get out of here now. But as she turned to make a break for the exit, the doors to the command center slammed shut with a resounding clang. From the shadows, figures emerged, alien soldiers, but not like the one they had fought before. These beings were taller, more imposing, their armor glinting in the dim light. They had been waiting. You will not leave, one of them spoke, its voice deep and alien. You are the last obstacle to the Federation's control. Kala gripped her blaster, her heart pounding as she realized the full extent of the danger they were facing. These aliens weren't just soldiers. They were agents of something far greater. And now Kala and Juno were their final targets. The air was suffocating as the alien soldiers moved closer, their heavy boots echoing through the sterile, cold corridors of the ship. Kala's eyes scanned the darkened room, every instinct screaming that time was running out. The Federation's forces were closing in and they were trapped. No way out, no way to hide. Juno's hand shot to his blaster, his grip tight as he aimed at the nearest soldier. We can't take them all on, he muttered under his breath, his voice tense. Kala didn't answer immediately. Instead, she focused on the soldiers, calculating her next move. They were not just soldiers, they were guardians of a truth far more dangerous than anything the Federation had ever shown. They were here to prevent Kala from revealing the galaxy's dark history, a history she now understood. The Federation's grip on the galaxy was stronger than any of them had realized, and this ship, with its advanced alien technology, was the key to their control. We need to buy time, Kala said, her voice sharp and urgent. Get to the escape pods, I'll hold them off. Juno hesitated, his gaze flickering between her and the soldiers advancing on them. Kala, this is suicide. But Kala's resolve was ironclad. If we don't fight back now, everything we've done will be for nothing. Trust me, Juno, I can hold them off. Just get to the pods. The truth has to come out. Before Juno could protest, Kala was already moving, her blaster raised and aimed at the alien soldiers. She fired a quick shot, hitting one of the soldiers square in the chest. The impact sent the soldier stumbling back, but it didn't slow the others. They charged, their weapons crackling with deadly energy. Kala dove behind cover, her heart pounding as she assessed the situation. Go, she shouted, turning to face Juno one last time. Juno hesitated, but seeing the fire in her eyes, he nodded. Don't die, he muttered before sprinting toward the escape route. The moment Juno was out of sight, Kala focused all her attention on the alien soldiers. The room was closing in, their movements a blur of alien agility and overwhelming firepower. She wasn't going to last long without backup, but she wasn't going to go down without a fight. She fired again, this time hitting another soldier in the shoulder. The shot sent a burst of light crackling through the air, but it didn't stop them. Instead, they moved faster, closing the gap between them and Kala. Come on, she muttered under her breath, her hands shaking from the adrenaline as she toggled the ship's weapon systems. The Federation had prepared her for many things, but this was different. She wasn't just fighting for survival, she was fighting to shatter the Federation's stranglehold on the galaxy. Her heart thundered in her chest as she triggered the weapon systems, sending a blinding pulse of energy toward the soldiers. The explosion rocked the room, momentarily knocking the soldiers back. But it wasn't enough. Enough, one of the alien soldiers shouted, raising its weapon. You cannot win, the alien soldier's words echoed in Kala's mind. You cannot win. But Kala didn't need to win. She just needed to survive long enough for Juno to get away with the truth. She had no illusions about herself. She knew the Federation's reach was far too vast, their influence too powerful to overcome with sheer force. But there was one thing they didn't understand: humanity's will to survive. The alien soldiers closed in, their weapons raised, ready to strike. But Kala's mind was already working. She quickly calculated her options, then made a choice. This ends now, she muttered, taking a deep breath as she threw a small device toward the center of the room. It emitted a sharp whine before detonating in a burst of light and sound. The pulse was not an explosion, it was a disruptor. The soldier nearest her stumbled as the disruptor pulsed through the room, cutting off the aliens' communication systems and scrambling their targeting algorithms. They froze for a split second, confused, vulnerable. Now's my chance, Kala thought, bolting toward the ship's central console. The data she needed was just within reach. If she could access it, the Federation's web of lies would unravel. But just as she neared the console, a hand shot out from behind her, gripping her wrist with inhuman strength. You think you can change everything? The alien's voice was cold, almost mocking. Kala whirled around, her blaster already raised, ready to fire. But something in the alien's eyes stopped her. It wasn't fear, it wasn't even anger, it was recognition. You're not like them, the soldier said, its voice softening. You carry the weight of something far greater than yourself. Kala hesitated, the blaster still raised but her hand trembling. Who are you? The alien's helmet slid back, revealing a face that was both familiar and alien at the same time, a human face but marred by scars and markings that spoke of a history long forgotten. We were once like you, it said. Once we fought the same fight, but we learned the cost of truth. The words hung in the air, and for the briefest moment, Kala saw something flicker in the alien's eyes: regret. Before she could respond, the alien stepped back, raising its weapon once again. It doesn't matter. You will die with the truth you seek. But just as the alien soldier aimed, a sudden explosion shook the ship. The console flared to life, and in that moment Kala realized Juno had succeeded. The data was out. The truth would be known. The explosion sent shockwaves through the ship, the walls groaning under the strain. Kala ducked for cover as the room was engulfed in chaos. The alien soldiers were disoriented, their systems glitching from the disruptor, giving Kala a brief window of opportunity. She didn't hesitate. With one last burst of strength, she sprinted toward the exit, leaving the alien soldier behind. The truth was out. But as she left the heart of the ship, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just unleashed something far more dangerous than they realized. Juno was waiting for her near the escape pods, his face filled with a mixture of relief and worry. Did you get it? He asked, breathless. Kala nodded, her face grim. We got the truth, but now we run the Federation, not going to stop, and neither are the ones who control them. Juno didn't need to ask what she meant. He already knew. Then let's make sure they don't win. They ran toward the escape pods, the ship shaking around them as the Federation's forces regrouped. But the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The truth had been unleashed, and Kala was ready to make sure that humanity would no longer be controlled by lies. The escape pod was small, barely more than a cramped compartment designed for emergency evacuations. The walls were cold and bare, the faint hum of the ship's failing systems reverberating through the metal. Inside, Kala and Juno sat side by side, their faces drawn, their bodies exhausted from the chaos they had just survived. Outside, the stars blurred past, the ship's engines pushing them further from the wreckage they had left behind. But no matter how far they traveled, no matter how many light years they put between themselves and the Federation's wrath, Kala couldn't shake the feeling that the war had only just begun. We did it, Juno said, his voice hoarse from the smoke and gunfire, a hint of disbelief still clinging to his words. Kala stared out of the small viewport, her expression unreadable. We did more than that, she said softly. We've just unleashed a war. Juno was silent for a moment, absorbing the weight of her words. The data they had stolen from the alien ship, The map, the Federation's darkest secrets, would change everything. The truth was out now, and no matter how much the Federation tried to suppress it, the galaxy had already begun to wake up. "You really think they'll come for us?" Juno asked, leaning back in his seat. "I mean, what now? We're fugitives, but we have the truth on our side." "The truth doesn't save you," Calla replied, her voice tinged with bitterness. "It makes you a target. The Federation doesn't let anyone expose their lies. They'll come for us, yes, but worse than that." Her voice trailed off as she stared at the stars. "There are others who won't want this truth to get out either." The unease in her voice wasn't lost on Juno. He knew she was right. The galaxy was full of factions, power-hungry entities, and shadowy organizations. The Federation wasn't the only force trying to control information. And now, Calla and Juno had put themselves directly in the crosshairs of everyone who wanted the truth buried forever. The escape pod rocketed through space, the hum of its engines a constant reminder of the fragility of their situation. The silence between them grew, filled only by the sound of their breaths and the quiet ticking of the ship's systems. The escape had been narrowly executed, but there was no celebration, no relief. Not yet. "We can't stay here," Calla said, breaking the silence. "This pod won't take us far enough. We need to find a way to communicate with the rest of the galaxy. Let them know what we've found." Juno nodded, his eyes scanning the small control panel in front of him. "We're close to the outer rim," he said, his voice focused. "We'll need to reach the Tesseran outpost, an old smuggler's network. They can get us the communication channels we need." The Tesseran outpost was a well-known haven for those on the run, pirates, smugglers, rebels, all hidden in the shadows, far from Federation jurisdiction. It was the perfect place to disappear or to send a message without the Federation's prying eyes. Calla's gaze hardened. "The Tesserans will help us, but it won't be easy. They'll want something in return, and the Federation won't stop hunting us." "We've made our choice," Juno replied, determination in his voice. "We either run and keep hiding or we fight, but we fight with the truth on our side." Calla leaned back in her seat, staring out into the void. The stars outside seemed endless, a vast, indifferent universe that held the answers they sought but also the dangers they feared. She had no illusions about the road ahead. The Federation would come for them, harder, faster, with more force than they could imagine. But she also knew that the galaxy wasn't just the Federation anymore. It belonged to everyone, to those who fought for freedom, for truth. "Then we fight," she said softly, her voice firm with the weight of conviction. "We bring the fight to them, but we don't fight alone. This is bigger than us now." Pod shuddered as Juno engaged the hyperdrive, sending them careening toward the Tesseran outpost. The ship's engines screamed in protest as the vast emptiness of space rushed past them, a blur of starlight and darkness. But as they moved deeper into the uncharted expanse, the unease in Calla's gut grew stronger. They were heading straight into enemy territory. Calla's thoughts drifted to Earth, her home, the place they had fought so hard to return to. She wondered what it would look like now, after everything that had happened. Would Earth ever heal from the wounds the Federation had inflicted on it? Would humanity ever be free from the lies they had been fed? A sudden alarm blared, snapping her out of her reverie. "Incoming vessel!" Juno shouted, his hands flying over the controls. "We're not alone." Calla's heart raced as she spun toward the viewport. A sleek, heavily armed ship materialized out of the shadows of the nebula, a Federation interceptor, its weapons powered up and ready to strike. "We've been found," Juno said through gritted teeth. "They're too close to outrun." Calla didn't hesitate. "We don't outrun them, we outsmart them." Juno glanced at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You have a plan." She nodded. "I do. Get us to the Tesseran outpost now. I'll handle the rest." Federation interceptor loomed closer, its engines humming with deadly intent. Calla's hands gripped the edge of her seat, her eyes fixed on the tactical readout flashing before her. The Federation had found them, and this wasn't a simple pursuit. They were here to wipe them out, asterisk, to make an example of them. They had no idea what Calla and Juno had uncovered, but the Federation was not about to take any chances. "How much longer until we reach the outpost?" Calla asked, her voice calm but her pulse racing. 3 minutes, Juno replied, his voice tight. "But we won't make it if we don't do something now. The interceptor is gaining on us." Calla nodded, her mind racing. The Tesseran outpost wasn't just a haven, it was a lifeline. But getting there meant surviving long enough to make it there. The Federation was ruthless, and they had the means to destroy anything that stood in their way. "Hold steady," she said, her voice resolute. I'm going to give them a reason to hesitate. Juno shot her a quick, uncertain glance, but there was no time for doubt. The Federation was closing in. Without another word, Calla spun toward the communications panel, hacking into the ship's systems. She keyed in a series of commands, sending a rapid, encrypted transmission to the Tesseran outpost. The message was simple. We're being hunted. Initiate the countermeasures. Now. She knew it wouldn't be enough to just outrun the Federation ship. They would always be faster, more powerful. They needed something more. The Federation interceptor was now almost on top of them, its weapons powering up, the bright light of its plasma cannons illuminating the black expanse of space. Calla could see the targeting systems locking onto their ship, their deadly beams charging. "Brace for impact," Juno shouted as he swerved the ship to the left, narrowly avoiding the first round of fire. The ship's shields flared up, crackling under the strain, but they wouldn't hold for long. Come on," Calla muttered under her breath, her hands flying over the controls. "Give me something." Just as the interceptor's cannons fired again, the ship lurched violently, as though a massive force had hit it from behind. A sudden shockwave rippled through space, knocking the Federation ship off course. Calla felt the pull of the gravitational anomaly as the ship pitched forward. "What the hell was that?" Juno gasped, his voice filled with awe. On the tactical display, an image flickered. A massive Tesseran warship had emerged from the shadows of the nebula. Its size dwarfed the Federation ship, and its weapons were already targeting the interceptor. "Tesseran forces," Calla breathed, a wave of relief flooding her. The Tesserans weren't just about to save them, they were about to make the Federation regret pursuing them. "We've been ordered to eliminate the Federation vessel," a voice crackled over the comms, smooth and authoritative. "You're clear for now, head to the rendezvous point." The Tesseran warship's weapons lit up with a devastating barrage, striking the Federation interceptor with pinpoint accuracy. The enemy ship erupted in a brilliant flash of light, its shields collapsing under the onslaught. The ship buckled and fell into the depths of the nebula, its energy signature fading as the Tesseran ship made short work of it. Calla exhaled, her heart racing but steady. "We made it!" Tesseran warship pulled into formation beside them, its dark hull looming like an indomitable fortress. For a moment, it was just the sound of the ship's engines, deep, resonant, and calming, filling the silence between Calla and Juno. "It's over," Juno said softly, his voice filled with disbelief. "We're not dead." Calla smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's never over, not now. The Federation will keep coming, and the Tesserans—" Her words trailed off, her thoughts shifting to the powerful, shadowy organization that had just intervened. The Tesserans had saved them, but at what cost? "I don't trust them." "Who do we trust then?" Juno asked, leaning back in his seat. "The truth is out now, Calla. The Federation can't suppress it anymore. It's done." Calla turned to him, her expression hardening with determination. "It's not done. It's just beginning. The Federation's lies will crumble, but they'll fight back harder than we ever imagined. And the Tesserans? We can't forget that they're playing their own game." The ship's comms crackled, and a new voice cut through the silence, a deep, gravelly tone unmistakable. "Calla, Juno, you've made an impression. Come aboard. We have much to discuss." The screen before them flickered, showing the face of the Tesseran commander, his expression unreadable. "This is where the real war begins," the commander said, his eyes narrowing. "You've uncovered the Federation's lies, but now you'll see just how deep the corruption runs. The Federation is just a part of the system, and the Tesserans, we have plans of our own." Calla's gaze hardened. "I'm not interested in their plans, I'm interested in Earth, and I'm not backing down." The commander's lips twitched into a knowing smile. "I think we're going to get along just fine." Tesseran warship loomed ahead, its dark, imposing silhouette cutting through the nebula like a shadow that swallowed the stars. The Federation's interceptor was little more than debris now, scattered through the void. But Calla knew better than to believe the danger had passed. Inside the cramped cockpit of their escape pod, Calla sat, eyes narrowed, scanning the communications panel. The Tesseran ship had saved them, but at what cost? They hadn't just come to their rescue out of kindness. The Tesserans had their own motives, and Calla was sure the time for thanks was over. Beside her, Juno was quiet, his fingers tapping restlessly on the armrest, but his eyes were filled with questions, questions that Calla didn't have answers to. "They want something from us," Calla said, her voice low but firm. "The Tesserans don't do anything for free." Juno looked at her, his face a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. "We don't have a choice, Calla. We have to work with them. The Federation will be after us, and we've made powerful enemies now. If the Tesserans don't help, we'll be hunted." Calla turned to him, her eyes hard with the weight of her decisions. "I know, Juno, but we need to stay focused. The Tesserans have their own agenda. We can't forget that." Just as she finished speaking, the comms crackled to life, a deep, resonant voice emerging from the static. "This is Commander Azar of the Tesseran fleet. You're clear to dock. Meet us at the central hangar. There's much to discuss, and time is of the essence." The pod lurched as Juno maneuvered it toward the hangar bay of the Tesseran warship. The lights flickered as the massive ship's engines powered down, and the pod docked with a soft thud. The moment the hatch opened, Calla and Juno were greeted by a small group of Tesseran soldiers, their armor gleaming in the harsh light. The soldiers didn't speak as they led Calla and Juno through the dim metal hallways of the warship. The air inside was cold, sterile, and had an almost oppressive feel to it. The deeper they went, the more alien the ship seemed. It wasn't just a vessel. It was a fortress built for secrecy, built for war. They were led into a large briefing room where Commander Azar was waiting. The commander stood at the head of the table, his imposing figure draped in dark armor. His eyes, sharp and calculating, took in Calla and Juno as they entered. "Sit," Azar commanded, his tone brokering no argument. Calla and Juno obeyed, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The room was silent, the only sound the low hum of the ship's systems around them. Azar didn't waste time. "You have made the Federation aware of something they did not want to know, and now you've become a threat to them." His voice was calm, measured, but there was an undercurrent of urgency. "That data you retrieved from the alien ship, it is more than just a map. It is the key to something that the Federation has been hiding for centuries." Calla's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Azar leaned forward, his fingers steepled in front of him. "The Federation has been hiding the existence of other civilizations, civilizations far older than Earth. The galaxy is not as empty as they've led you to believe. There are powers out there, and some of them are far beyond the Federation's control. The Tesserans have been fighting them in the shadows for years." Juno shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "And you want us to help you fight these powers?" Azar's eyes narrowed. "No, I want you to help us uncover the truth about Earth. The Federation's greatest lie is that Earth is the only lost planet. The truth is far worse. Earth is a key player in a much larger galactic conflict, and the Federation is doing everything in its power to keep it hidden." Calla's mind reeled. "What do you want from us?" Azar stood up, walking around the table with deliberate steps. "You already have the data, Calla, but what you don't understand is that the Federation isn't just trying to silence you. They are trying to prevent Earth's return to power. The Federation's control over the galaxy relies on keeping humanity in the dark. But you're the wild card, the anomaly in their carefully constructed system." Calla felt the weight of his words, the burden of truth pressing against her chest. She had been right all along. Earth's story wasn't just about a lost planet. It was about power, about control, and the Federation was terrified of what would happen if the rest of the galaxy learned the truth. "We've been fighting a war in the shadows," Azar continued. "The Tesserans have resisted the Federation's control, but we cannot do it alone. You must join us. Help us expose what they've hidden." Calla exchanged a glance with Juno. There was no hesitation in his eyes. "We're in," he said simply. But Calla's voice was quieter, more guarded. "What happens next?" Azar's lips curled into a faint smile. "Next, we start a war for the truth." The Tesseran command room was abuzz with activity as Calla, Juno, and Commander Azar huddled around a holomap of the galaxy. The bright blue lines on the map illuminated their faces, casting long shadows on the walls. The coordinates from Earth were marked. A starting point, Azar explained, for what was about to unfold. "We have allies across the galaxy," Azar explained, his voice low. "They've been watching, waiting for someone to expose the Federation's lies. We'll need to reach them before the Federation does." "What about the rest of humanity?" Calla asked, her voice carrying a heavy weight. "What will they think when they learn the truth?" Azar turned to her, his gaze penetrating. "Humanity will fight for its place in the galaxy, but we must prepare them for what they're about to face." The implications of Azar's words hung in the air, thick and undeniable. The truth about Earth would spark a fire that could either unite the galaxy or tear it apart. The Federation wouldn't just stop at Kala and Juno. They would stop at nothing to silence the resistance. As they prepared to leave the Tesseran ship, Juno's voice broke the silence. "Where do we start?" Azar turned, his face grim. "We start by securing Earth, and we make sure the Federation never gets its hands on it again." The cold, sterile space of the Tesseran warship now felt like a distant memory. Kala stood on the deck of their new ship, an aging but sturdy vessel the Tesserans had provided, their latest move in the war against the Federation's lies. The ship was nothing like the sleek Federation designs, but it was their ship, a symbol of their rebellion. "Are you ready?" Juno's voice broke through her thoughts as he approached, his expression serious but resolute. Kala didn't turn. She was staring out into the vast expanse of space, her eyes tracing the path ahead. "I don't think I'll ever be ready for what's coming," she replied, her voice soft, almost to herself. "But we don't have a choice. We have to finish what we started." Juno nodded, his boots clanging softly against the metal floor as he stepped beside her. "We've got Earth, Kala. We've got the truth. Now we just need to make sure the Federation doesn't destroy it all." Kala met his gaze, her resolve firming like steel. "That's why we're going to fight. The Federation has spent decades hiding the truth, but we're going to expose them. We're going to make sure humanity knows who they are, and we won't stop until Earth is free." The mission was simple, but the stakes had never been higher. The Federation was not just a governing body, it was an empire, and the galaxy was their dominion. But the truth was a weapon they couldn't control, and Kala and Juno were its bearers. They had learned the Federation's secrets. Earth wasn't just a forgotten planet. It was the key to unlocking a vast network of lost civilizations and advanced technology, and the Federation had kept it hidden from the galaxy for centuries. Kala's mind raced as the ship's engines hummed steadily, the distant stars flickering outside the viewport. "We can't let them win," she thought. The truth was too important, too powerful. The Tesseran fleet was poised to strike, and Earth was their first target. The Federation's counteroffensive was swift. A fleet of ships, equipped with overwhelming firepower, closed in on Earth's orbit, determined to wipe out any trace of the truth. The Federation was closing in. Kala stood in the command center of their ship, watching as the incoming data streamed across the screens. The Federation had sent a fleet, but the Tesserans had intercepted their communications. There was a chance, a slim one, but it was their only shot. They would hit the Federation where it hurt the most. "It's now or never," Juno said, his voice steady, though the weight of their mission hung heavy on his shoulders. "Are you ready for this?" Kala looked at him, her eyes unblinking. "We don't stop until Earth is free." The air was thick with tension as the Tesseran fleet prepared to engage the Federation. This was it. The battle that followed was nothing short of chaotic. Explosions rocked the cold emptiness of space as the Federation fleet clashed with the Tesserans. Their weapons crackled with deadly energy, lighting up the vast void as the two forces collided. Kala's heart raced as she watched the chaos unfold, each ship moving with lethal precision. She wasn't on the front lines of the battle itself, but her mission was just as important. She was part of a smaller task force, one that had to reach Earth's surface and ensure the data they had uncovered was broadcast to the galaxy. "We have one shot at this," Juno said, his eyes locked on the screens, tracking the ship's movements. "Once we drop the message, we'll have a small window to escape. They won't give us more than that." Kala nodded, a determined fire burning in her eyes. "Let's make sure it counts." They entered Earth's atmosphere, the ship shaking violently as they descended. The Federation was focused on the battle in space, giving them a brief moment to launch their final strike. As the ship broke through the clouds and hit the ground, the world below was a shattered reflection of the Earth Kala had known. The cities were in ruins, the land scarred from centuries of Federation control, but there was life here, hidden, waiting for the truth to be exposed. Kala and Juno rushed to the communications relay, activating the device that would send the truth out to every corner of the galaxy. "It's done," Juno said, breathing a sigh of relief. But Kala knew better. The Federation wouldn't just stop here. They would come for them. The message was sent, the data unleashed, and the truth about Earth, the truth about the Federation's lies, was broadcast across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, humanity was free to know its own past. The galaxy was awakening, the fragile hold of the Federation beginning to crack. But as Kala and Juno made their way back to the ship, the reality of their situation set in. The Federation would stop at nothing to suppress what they had revealed. Earth was no longer a forgotten world. It was the battleground for the future of the galaxy. As they boarded the ship, ready to leave Earth behind, Calla turned to Juno, her face a mask of determination. "We've started something bigger than we can imagine," she said. "This isn't just about Earth anymore, it's about the future of humanity, and the Federation won't let us forget that." "So what now?" Juno asked, his voice soft, uncertain. Calla looked out at the stars, her eyes reflecting the infinite unknown. "We fight. We build alliances, we expose the Federation's lies, and we make sure humanity has a place in the galaxy, no matter the cost." As their ship blasted into the cold expanse of space, Calla knew that their journey was far from over. The Federation had been shaken, but it wasn't beaten. And now, they were no longer just cadets. They were the last hope for a galaxy that had been silenced for far too long. "The fight has only begun," Calla whispered, staring out into the unknown. "And we will be ready."